PR Connections Radio presents. This podcast is brought to you by LifeWave. Ready to elevate your wellness game? Meet X39 from LifeWave.com. This game-changing patch uses phototherapy to stimulate your skin, enhancing strength and stamina by channeling your body's innate energy. Simply apply it to harness infrared heat, naturally boosting your vitality. Want to learn more? Visit www.lifewave.com/VernD and step into a healthier, more active lifestyle today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Breaking the Silence Beyond the Boundaries, where bold voices rise and limits fall. Now, I'm your host, Gail Larson, and today we are going to explore what happens when your voice actually changes the atmosphere of the room, whether it's conversations about family, parenting, politics, culture, personal values. There are moments when just speaking honestly can feel, uncomfortable, especially when your perspective challenges expectations or shifts familiar dynamics. But growth often requires us to just stop shrinking ourselves just in order to make other people feel more comfortable, right? So today, we have with us one of my good friends from long time ago, and my current friend, Steve Tatunik. And
hello,
Steve,
Gail. Hi.
How are you?
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I am so excited to have you as well. So tell us just a little bit about yourself.
So my background is pretty much primarily in education for the past 30 years, from classroom teacher to supervisor to administrator to now working in a large corporation. We know how that is. And so, my hobby and my love is travel. So I kind of find ways to incorporate education and travel. And that really is pretty much my existence.
And that is truly exciting because we have worked together for, I don't know how many years, maybe 10 years or more back in the day with a corporate organization, so to speak. But both of us had an opportunity to travel a lot. And when you travel to different places and you're on these stages, whether virtual stages or actual stages in school districts, you have the opportunity to expand the room, so to speak, with your voice. So how does your voice expand the room? Are you always readily accepted with what it is that you have to say?
I deal with certain subject matter. When you talk about politics and culture, that is kind of where I helm in the humanities division, the humanities world. But it's important to understand where I began, where I didn't have a voice, where being the youngest of four boys, let me put that into perspective. You really don't have a voice at all. So it's funny because I was just thinking kind of, when did I get my voice? How did I get this voice to become what I am today, where I can present in front of 600 people, captivate an audience, walk away and invigorate, no matter what the subject is. But it wasn't always that easy. And when I say it wasn't that easy, I would say it probably changed for me maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And
how did it change? What led you there?
So it was funny because if back in the day, I really wouldn't talk. I really didn't feel my opinion mattered. I feel like everyone's opinion mattered more. And again, stemming from my family, I'm sure they would not like hearing that, but it is true. But when I became a fourth grade teacher, a lot of times your students would raise their hand, ask questions, but I wanted them to challenge me. I wanted them to have a voice, but I didn't realize what I was doing. More importantly, so I worked in a very low socioeconomic school to begin with. And it was all about getting them to feel free to challenge me, to ask questions, because I never raised my hand in class. So what I realized was it was about having confidence and conviction of what you're saying and what you're feeling. So the many years that I taught this, then when I got into leadership and I realized I kind of fell back into that, ooh, no one really cares what I have to say. No one really, who am I to make a difference? And why does my opinion or voice matter? And then when I began public speaking, I was brought to those days of teaching in a fourth grade classroom thinking, now I need to step it up. I did it to my students, had them step it up. I need to be that person to really show them why it's important to have a voice and why it's important to have a voice with that opinion or that true concentration of not just saying something to say something, not just saying something to fill the room, but saying something that really you stand by. So that's
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I'm excited about hearing that because it just reminds me how much you and I have in common, having both began in education, both starting out in the publishing industry and making a difference, particularly for inner city classrooms in, those urban environments where a lot of times students themselves don't want to, step up because, they've just been held down so much. And so this, brings me again to what you're doing now in terms of humanities and the impact that what you have to say and your voice can have on students. Do you have an opportunity to contribute how the content of, your publications affect the inner cities? And if so, in what way?
Yeah, and it's interesting. So yes, and I've had international experience as well. So that takes a
Okay.
whole different spin on things. But
Yes.
just in the nation alone, and I reside in Florida.
Hmm.
So you can imagine the political spectrum, the standards when you think about curriculum, you think about what is taught. You can say we're all teaching history, we're all teaching factual information.
Hmm.
But the idea of inquiry and the idea of critical thinking and getting people, friends, students to have the idea of backing their ideas up with support, with evidence, rather than saying what they say. So when I'm looking at certain, topics or certain sources that I want to make sure that all students, whether you're in a low socioeconomic division, whether you're in a red state or a blue state, I want to make sure that they can make their own decision based on a variety of information and be proud of what they're standing by. Because I would hate for someone to say, I believe this, and then be challenged with that. I want to say, okay, this is what you believe. What is the evidence to make you believe that? And so
Absolutely. Yep.
I was out last night and I mentioned the topic to my friend who happens to be a female, and you'll see kind of where this works in. And I said, when did you find your voice? Or how did you find your voice? And I was kind of telling her some of my stories. And it was really interesting in the fact that she did not want to validate her opinion, her thought process, because of, it could lead into an argument. It could
Yeah.
affect someone's mood, which I've learned, so what? So what? If they're a friend, if they're in my circle, it's my belief. I am not going to do any action that's going to be harmful. But I also think back to our time together, Gail.
Oh,
You
yeah.
taught me more than you possibly realized. Because, and the reason I say that is I felt like I was able to ask you any question I wanted, regards to race, regards to whatever. You
Right.
were my friend. You were always going to give me the honest perspective, and honest truth. And I just foresee so many people don't have that voice because they don't have those deep connections. And I think especially for males.
Well, for sure, for sure. And I appreciate you saying so. You really can't have a team within an organization if you don't have that trust and that security that what you say to one another stays there and, can be honored for what it is, as opposed to, like I said, shrinking back and saying, well, I can't say this and I can't say this because I'm worried about my job or I'm worried about our relationship, kind of thing. So, as you know, I left my last organization about 2 years ago, and it had a lot to do with what we're talking about right now. You brought up the whole thing about the political climate and the whole thing with like DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I have always, had very strong feelings about, how our content is represented across, the United States and internationally. So I began to push, to say, how are we going to do this? I developed this advisory board, talking to others, just like you were talking to your friend about, tell me how you feel about this and how you think this should be represented. But then all of a sudden, with that political climate changing, they just kind of said, nah, I don't think from a company standpoint, this is such a good idea, And so I'm like, well, I guess if I can't use my voice to expand the room, I'm out of here,
I love it. I love it. But it's funny because now, you have to be fearful of what gets projected in social media or there is that bit of fear, depending on what role you play in society and your level or your position. In my role as an education, you have a parent that sees something that they don't agree with. They're not going to ask a question. They post it, it gets newsworthy, and it's kind of one of those things that you have to say to them, let's have this conversation. Let's have this open dialogue, which so often we don't do. We just kind of keep it silent.
Yeah, so true, so true. Well, you mentioned earlier about traveling internationally. Do you have a story for us where your voice was expanding the room someplace else, or because culturally things can
Yes. And so I was going to the Middle East, so I researched kind of cultural norms before I went. And as I don't know if you can tell, this, I'm a very animated person.
Yes,
I talk with my hands. I enjoy the love of talking with others. And a lot of the comments that were made was kind of like they just want the information. They don't want to play games or do activities or make it interactive. So I asked certain individuals, like, okay, do you want me to just kind of go through a PowerPoint, which I find incredibly boring. Like I hate to say it, I want to entertain my own self. Let's be real. So I started off, and in my introduction, I start with a rhetorical question. So keep in mind, imagine 600 individuals, which again, first time in the Middle East. I was at this point in Egypt, and I was expecting silence. I was expecting just to move on.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, hands start going up, and what was supposed to be a quick kind of comment led to just this amazing conversation. Wow. And I realized at that moment, let me change the course of what I was going to discuss. I mean, I flew off the rails completely. I was like, let me really reinvigorate these folks, because their goal or their challenge was, again, as any educator in the nation, is they're struggling with the basic challenges. The challenges we have in America is the exact same challenges they were facing there. I had no clue.
Wow.
So I made it more of a conversation and kind of took on that Oprah, that talk show host vibe. I'm running around this huge room with a microphone. And at the very end, all the individuals were taking selfies with me and posting them, which I didn't know.
Awesome.
But I asked them, what was it that I said that really impacted you? Because the topic was about inquiry. The topic was about how do we get students to think, but how do we get students, and going back to my fourth grade experience, where you have some students that always raise their hand, that always have a voice. You have your friends who are always talkative and those who sit back and just observe. But how do you get everyone actively engaged? And so I kind of used this model of kind of analogy of making them realize no matter where you are, no matter what struggles you are, we all are the same. I don't care if you're a fourth grade child. I don't care if you're 50 years old. I don't care what race you are. We are uniquely the same in that way. But you got to set rules for the conversations you're going to have. You got to set routines and structure. And that was one of the things that I remember, kind of complete silence, but you saw everyone just jotting down notes.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that was the comment that I got on my LinkedIn account. All these questions about, wow, you really are expert. I'm like, no, there's nothing. I thought that was common sense.
Yes.
But it really was the impact of the voice of making them realize that we are all relatable. We're all in this together.
That's absolutely right. And so how did it end up then? I mean, after all was said and done, did they, I don't want to say buy what you were selling, but
Absolutely bought what I was selling. And again, I hate to say that was the goal, but which is not. But the ultimate goal is, yeah, they bought what I was selling. But again, I would have loved, in this scenario, I didn't get a chance to kind of see how this truly affected things because that was kind of a one-time stint. But in my normal routine of what I do, I constantly do revisit school districts or schools to see, did what I say, not only did they hear it, but what action did they take? That's what I want to see. What is the end action that they're doing to say, for example, right now there's some certain heated topics in our country right now that, certain teachers, parents, students want certain things removed here, but certain states want it. And so my question was, I'm not going to remove anything. This is history, but what are you doing in the classroom to make it an important conversation, to allow students to think freely what they want to think? And again, teacher A from teacher B may be doing things completely different methodology or different approaches, but did you hear what I said in the trainings or what I was doing that made you realize this active classroom strategy or this activity gets students engaged? And if you can get anybody engaged, adults, friends, whatever, to me, that is half the battle.
Absolutely. And, you did something that was just truly critical when you were in front of them for the first time. And that is establishing a relationship with these 600 people. So whether they purchase from you or not, the relationship became most important. So when you came back and there was the implementation of the program or whatever it was you were selling, that there was buy-in because they knew that you had a relationship with them as well. And so, that is really what's most satisfying because you can go back into, let's say, that district with something else altogether. Maybe it's not humanities, maybe it's math, maybe it's science or whatever, but it's that relationship that you took the risk to say, this is what I want to talk about. And this is what I hear is important to you. And it ended up being just a wonderful situation.
And that what you just said is the key. What is important to you? Because people can talk and talk all they want and have their voice, but is it important to me what you're saying? And how do I get people to think that what I'm saying is important? I think that's key in any conversation we have, no matter what it is. And so far too often, you don't necessarily get to share that too much because some certain voices consume the room in a negative
way. Oh, for sure. For sure.
Right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, you and I both, I'm sure, remember sitting in those meetings where we're listening to those voices that intentionally try to consume the room, regardless of, what we're thinking. So, now, going back to how we started the conversation, because you had mentioned that you were talking to your friend about how their voice expands the room and so forth. So let's transition over to a personal standpoint, like with your family. And I'm assuming now that at the stage that you and I are in our life, you have children that are adults.
Yes.
I don't want to assume anything.
Yes. And it's hard. That's where it becomes I have to take a moment to before I say anything, think about the approach I'm taking, because again, my beliefs are very different from their now adult beliefs.
Yeah.
Before you're kind of you're modeling for them, you're hoping that they've gained. But I find that with social media and the news and everything that's exposure that we have, the factual information is hard to decipher. And it's hard for people to, when they have a voice, you're kind of like, I don't know, sometimes you're not that I want to shut them down. I would never want to do that. I just want that evidence to be there. Give me that real evidence. Give me that real experience. And I think as adults, we've walked the walk. We have lived it.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
that no longer is good anymore. It's kind of like, well, I learned this from TikTok or social media or whatever it is. I'm like, no, you can't do that. What information? What are you reading? But I will always say that one thing I've learned, because I realized, the times have changed, and I'll always say, oh, show me that. Or where did you get that from? I'm so interested in that. And I
Yes.
will take the time and even though it's against completely every morsel of what I believe in, I will watch it. I will understand why they think the way they think, and I'll comment on it. And, I'll let them know, it's not my thing. I'll kind of say comically, it's not my thing or whatever, but
Yeah.
they know that I did look into it. I researched it. I think that is valuing what their voice said. I'm not ever going to diminish anybody's voice. So that was a lesson. I was going to say, my kids have learned. No, it's what I learned.
Absolutely. There have been so many situations where, just like you say, I'm listening to what maybe my kids are saying, but in what I'm hearing is, have you lost your mind? You
Right,
were not
right.
raised this way. However, and I applaud you for saying, okay, I'll listen. And then I'll ask, I like what you said about, okay, so show me, explain to me why you believe this way. And then not be so ready to say as soon as they finish talking, but because that's the thing that,
Right.
shuts down the conversation. Definitely.
Absolutely. Go. And that's so true, Gil. Not stopping it, letting it go. So continue on. But that is key. Yeah. I mean, it's so often that when we're listening, you get to a certain point and you do, it's in your head. But so recently I was just, single guy here, just saying that, learned a lot from America.
Okay, listeners. No.
But recently I'm good friends with my ex-wife still. But yeah, if listeners, I'm available. Just saying. But anyways, going back to that. So having conversation with my ex-wife about certain things, because again, I think so often we forget to really internalize and really look at ourselves in the spectrum of what we're saying. So I was on a call earlier, a business call, and talking about how you affect the room or how you affect any situation.
Mhm.
I think what I used to do is I would, I don't know if I would shut down because my voice wasn't important or I wanted to be nice and let everyone talk. And but I
Right.
realized I was not speaking up. I was not, or I maybe would say a fragment, because again, in a household with 3 other brothers, it's hard to get
Yes.
a full thought in. So just now, before this call, when I was on the call, I really thought about, I was like, wow, I think I spoke up more than I usually would. You know me, I'm usually sat back and I quiet, but I
Right.
spoke more because I thought I have a different perspective, a wide range perspective than I think some of the other people may have had.
Mhm.
Like if you don't share your mind and don't open up with your opinions, no one's ever going to grow or no one's going to ever realize what else they could be thinking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as a result, sometimes of your taking that risk and speaking up, have you ever come across people who have said, wow, you really changed? Or maybe it's the opposite. Somebody else has done that and you realize maybe, it's your ex or,
Yeah.
this relationship.
And that's just it. It was the wow. You really have changed. I didn't know whether to take it as a good thing or a bad thing, because yes, I would hope that everyone is growing and evolving and changing continuously. And I hope that people around you bring out the best in you and bring out the comfort level, because it really comes back to confidence.
Oh,
It
yeah.
wasn't me. But as far as negative, with certain things, politics being one.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, how can we not? It's where we're living in right now. I
Right.
did say something because I got so frustrated, and Gail, it goes back to DEI.
Yep.
That
Hmm.
is my life. That is what we do, and we do it in the position for me, at least, for students, and again, students being all people. We're all growers, we're all learners. And I got to a point where I'm like, they will never understand because they are wealthy. They are, I hate to say it, white male, they are the privileged, they are never going to understand. So I can make a choice, and I can still be friends with this person and have a conversation, or I can just bail out. And I sadly chose to bail out. And I thought, let me reflect on this for a while, and nope.
Hmm.
Months later, I've still bailed out. It just
Yep.
wasn't worth my energy.
Yep. Yep. And a lot of times I too, will find myself, or in my past experience, find myself shrinking because I just wanted to let the conversation move on instead of standing my ground, taking the risk, and, making my voice be heard and expand the room. So as we make our way, what would you say to someone then? And it's because right now, before I ask this question, how long have you been in your new role?
It's about a year, not even a
About
year
a
yet. So
year.
about a
Okay.
year. So I still feel like I'm back to day one. I still feel like I'm back at 21 years old, where I'm just learning everything, kind of like I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So
So what would you say to someone, let's say, that's on your team, that maybe is feeling that they can't express themselves because it'd be too much?
yes, yes. And you know what happens. It's always going to happen. So the one thing I've learned is, because I want to sit there with a timer. I want to walk around life with a timer and be like, okay, you have 1 minute to talk. Then pass it to someone else. Because again,
Yeah.
so I'm always in these situations where I'm like, oh, this is. So I'll do kind of one-on-one calls and be like, I'll let them talk what they want to talk about. But more importantly, I'll kind of lead the conversation is, I want to know what is most important to them. What is it that they are struggling with? What is it? Why do they feel like they have to have, I guess, a louder voice than someone else?
Hmm. Yep.
So it's kind of navigating the psychological aspect of it all, which I thrive on psychological, just observing people and their actions. So in my new role, being kind of dealing with people who have a wealth of experience, much more than I do, who have a key knowledge, but it goes back to, I need to make sure that everyone is collaborating together equally, fairly, that everyone's happy every day. So it's little things that I do where sometimes I'll just say, you know what, you're taking the lead on this. What is your idea? What would you like for me to do? Rather than me say, here's what I expect. What do you want for me to do to support you with whatever you want? And I have to pause, like once in a while, I have to write it down to sit there and remind myself, even though I'm taking in charge of this, I need to take that step back, make sure they're being valued, not necessarily heard, but valued.
That's
And
right.
then I think it gives them their voice.
Absolutely. Yep. That is so important. Anytime you can turn the conversation into, what are your needs?
Yes.
What expectations do you have? How can I help you to meet those needs? Then the conversation is going to take a very different turn. So I appreciate you coming on, Steve, and reminding me and reminding our audience how important that is, and what happens when your voice expands the room, especially when it's to meet their needs. So, to everyone out there, thank you, thank you. And remember that growth will sometimes challenge old expectations because honesty oftentimes makes us feel uncomfortable. So, just remember, don't shrink your voice to fit the room, allow your voice to expand it. So until next time, everyone, keep breaking the silence and go beyond the boundaries. Bye-bye.
Classy Communications provides public relations and marketing solutions for businesses, professionals, and nonprofit organizations. They can deliver the true meaning of your business with press releases, social media marketing, web development, email marketing, book publishing, and much more. Wherever your potential clients are, they can help you connect with them. Visit classycommunications.net to learn more about their suite of services that can help your business stand out from the rest. Classy Communications is your solution for business success. PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.